Now it's time for all things mental health with your host, Dr. Nicholas Goodwin. Come on in, take a seat. All are welcome here. It's Health Cafe Radio.
It's been a while, so how the hell have you been?
All right, welcome to Health Cafe Radio. Nick Goodwin here. I have a super special guest I want to introduce. Erika Miley is here, sex therapist. What is up, Erika?
Yo, thanks for having me, man.
I try to fit in the fact that I'm friends with a sex therapist in like 80% of my conversations.
So I get either reaction, and I also figure out my audience before I tell people I'm a sex therapist. Sometimes I just say I'm a therapist because I'm like, I don't want to go in the whole story. I just kind of want to be here. But then when I say I'm a sex therapist, I get either reaction. I get, oh, that's neat, or oh God, I don't want to talk to you anymore.
Right. How did I end up talking to this person and now I have to act interested in sex therapy? Yeah.
No, or I'm terrified of saying anything to this person because they're going to analyze everything I have to say.
Right,
and in reality, I'm not doing that. I don't care.
No, yeah. Are you paying me money right now? Am I going to get a check for this? I don't care who you are. Yeah, I don't
exactly.
care.
Stop.
Exactly. No, it's so great to have you. I was thinking about having you on my show, which I'm so excited about, and it strangely gave me this memory of watching this episode of Bill Maher. You know who Bill Maher is?
Yes.
Yeah. And he's talking about all this political stuff. You know, he has the Republicans and the liberals, and they're all, blah, 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 on their polarized issues. And then Chris Rock just walks in because he's that famous. He can just walk into the show.
He just show up. Yeah.
He just shows up. And then he sits down and talks, and then somebody tries to sort of start re-talking about whatever nonsense they were talking about. And Bill Maher's like, who cares? Chris Rock's here, right? And I feel that way with you. I feel like It's like, I don't care about anything. I got to hang out with Erika. And I think that if we lived in the same state, if you showed up, I'd be like, everyone just shut up. Erika's here and we get to hang out with her now. I don't care about any of it. So
thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Such an honor to have you. Yeah, such an honor to have you. You've been referring people to me. You send me awesome clients who are I feel like I can do a lot of stuff with. So I really dig our professional relationship. It's very cool to collaborate with you.
Same. I mean, seriously, and I'll gush on you for a second because I've been working in the mental health field and sex therapy field for a while, and it's hard to find someone who sits with your clients and listens to them.
Okay.
And I can't say that it is not easy to find somebody who does that, and it does it well. And you do it beautifully. And you hear what my people have to say, and then you listen and you act accordingly.
That's so nice. I really appreciate that. Tell me about the journey that sort of got you to being a sex therapist. I'm sure you've been asked that 100 times, but maybe give me whatever version you want to tell me. How did you get to where you're at?
Absolutely. I don't mind telling the story because I think that our stories about ourselves, they help other people understand us, and we can then meet as humans, right? If we see each other more as humans, we're more likely to meet and be able to have conversations rather than be divisive, like everything it seems to be anymore. Typically, not just politics, but
right.
So I essentially started. I like to tell the story because I think some people roughly around Nick and I's age, which is in our 30s, we might remember the show Talk Sex with Sue that was on the Oxygen Network.
I don't know that show.
So it was back in it started, I think, in the 90s and probably went through the early 2000s, but it was on Oxygen, and this older woman, I would say she was probably in her 50s when I started watching it as a young person, would be on TV talking very frankly about sex and about our bodies, and actually had a medical background herself, and essentially would educate people about sexuality, but also basic sexuality that most people are not getting access to. So the education system is such that most people are not getting thorough, good sex education that includes things like pleasure. And she was unabashed about talking about every part of it. She talked about sex toys, and she never, ever, ever uttered a shaming word at any point on her show and answered people's questions. And I remember, and I was a kid, I was probably 11 or 12 the first time I saw that. And I thought, that's a cool job.
Yeah, for sure.
That is a really cool job. At that point, I didn't think like, oh, I'm going to go be a sex therapist. It just kind of opened my eyes that was something people did as a job. And so I started primarily in mental health, but you were going to say something, Nick.
No, I've seen her on like late night shows where she has all these sex toys and she talks about them.
Yes, exactly.
She has all these awesome gifts of her presenting these apparatuses. So
yes,
I remember
this. So I started in mental health field. So I have my bachelor's degree. So you Spokane people, I went to college in Spokane. I am I don't know that Whitworth would want to claim me considering what I do now, but I'm a Whitworth kid. I graduated with my bachelor's in psychology and then my master's degree in clinical mental health. And I have wanted to help people since I was young, and this was the path that I chose to do that with. And I figured out pretty early in my career that I was I worked very easily with sexual issues, and I'm talking about all sorts of sexual issues. I'm talking, and majority of my career was around sexual trauma. So working with people who had been through sexual assault, working with people who had been who were trying to understand themselves now with this narrative in their life. So I continued that comfort through my career, and I then eventually worked with people who had committed sex offenses. And that really, really solidified for me, like, this is my gig. This is what I love. A lot of people don't understand that when I say that. They're like, why would you want to work with those people, in quotation marks? Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed working with people with some of the hardest sexual things to tackle. And not just because I'm an incredibly curious nerd, but I also really believe that help and education can fundamentally change people's lives.
Gotcha.
And that we shouldn't throw people away, if that makes sense.
Definitely. So it almost felt like, and I kind of had this similar experience where it's almost like your specialty sort of becomes the people that find you, which they tend to start becoming very similar. And you're like, oh, I'm working with like a dozen people with this issue. So that must kind of mean that maybe this is something that I'm particularly good at or feel particularly comfortable doing. Yes.
I've also been a curious to a fault since I was young, that so once I find something that I enjoy or I want to know more about, I hunt down every part of it and want to know all the things about it. So I was reading research around sexuality and people who had committed sex offenses. I was really, to many of my professors' chagrin, every assignment I did was around sexuality, and they were like, you don't need to be so specific now, but I'm like, but this is what I'm really into.
If I'm not supposed to write a paper on this, I got to make it about something that I can keep my attention for an extended amount of time.
Absolutely. And so I have always really, really enjoyed that, and part of that path was also helping other therapists and colleagues with their discomfort around sex or their lack of information around it. Because guess what? Big surprise. Most medical professionals, whether you're in mental health, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a psychiatrist, whether even OBGYNs, get about 4 hours of human sexuality education.
Oh, that's not very much.
No, and especially considering that's how we all get here.
Yeah. So, that's the only reason we're here. Yeah, that makes sense.
So in our field, like in mental health, is not unique in that way. And so many therapists often come to me looking for more information or support. So I have essentially even further developed my niche into helping medical professionals and therapists with how they feel about sexual topics, but also providing resources to them so that they can actually serve their clients the way they need to.
And because we didn't get that much training, there's not all these, abundance of sex specific therapists that can deal with these issues. So a lot of us are having to be like, well, I guess there's no one behind me. So if you bring this issue up, it's probably going to be me who's going to be working on it with you, even if I not super prepared. So that's
Yeah,
fabulous.
absolutely. And one of my colleagues looked at me and said, "Erika, you're the sex therapist for therapists." And I was
Yeah,
like,
there we go.
"Whoa, I don't know about all that, but
That's
okay."
like
I mean, that
that's
kind
a
of fit.
crown.
But it fits for what
Yeah.
I really want. I want people to be able to be unafraid of what they need to talk about, so that they have healthy physical functioning.
Sure.
and,
Yeah.
and we should be able to talk about sex in the same way we would talk about having a headache or getting a cold or any
Yeah.
of the other things that human physical beings deal with.
Definitely. Was there a specific, like, because there's sex in human condition and in therapy, there's so many different topics there. Was there something
Mhm.
particularly that you found very interesting that you think kind of transitioned you into making it mostly your thing?
I think sexual trauma in particular
Yeah.
really I often work with the people who typically try to find me are female identified clients
Hmm.
who have been so disconnected from even the idea of pleasure because
Wow.
they've dealt with sexual assault or they've dealt with sexual boundary crossing. So it doesn't necessarily have to be this large traumatic event that everyone wants to envision, that someone was raped, right? Like
Right.
it doesn't necessarily have to be that. Of course happens, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that only, or that specific. It can be that this person experienced various sexual boundary crossings throughout their life, and now they have a partner that they're married to and have been for a long time. And some of these issues are now coming up in their sex life and they don't know how to manage them.
I see. I see. That's the clients that you were seeing initially that made you sort of think, okay, this is something that I
Yeah.
want to become an expert in.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And then also then working with um when I worked for when I worked in the prison setting,
Yeah.
working with people who had committed sex offenses, that really impacted me too, because I was seeing similar things. I was seeing people who had
I see.
been through extreme trauma, the worst stories you've ever heard in your life,
Right.
and having then hurting others, and wanting to help them not do that again. So that kind of continued to push me further down the path of wanting to understand how specifically trauma impacts our sexual health and our ability to be sexual people later in our lives.
It's interesting. You see kind of like a comparison there. The fact that one person, the sexual trauma in their life made it so they couldn't,
Mm-hmm.
enjoy sex. And then in the other complete spectrum, still, but the same, antecedent in a sense, the same, that this trauma that they experienced
Yep.
pushed them to the point where they were now hurting other people, but
Mm-hmm.
as sort of consequences of really some of a similar issue.
Yes, absolutely. And it became very clear to me that we as human beings need to treat the entire system.
Mhm.
It's not just treat the victim and help the victim, but it's also like you need to help the people that have been committing these crimes so that this doesn't happen again, and not in a way
Yeah.
of like punishment and shame. It is, no, we need to actually tackle how did we get here.
Yeah.
That's
That's
how
great.
we help save people in the future. It's as much as we do want to punish, it's there, humans
Yeah.
often want to take that, like I want people to feel the pain I feel, right?
Definitely.
And
Definitely.
when in reality, if we want to reduce the amount of pain that's caused,
Yeah.
um, we have to help heal.
You and me, I've worked with people who've committed sexual offenses, not necessarily as a provider though, but just in my background, and
Mm-hmm.
it's something that I've given a lot of thought to in a sense that how
Mm-hmm.
do we as healthcare professionals work with people who've hurt other people,
Yes.
especially sexually, which I'm not putting value on anything, but for me, I think for a lot of people, we make that as very bad. Like that's like the worst sometimes we can think about is being hurt
Right.
sexually. And so, but how do we as healthcare professionals, how are we able to? And I've come to similar conclusions, and I'm like, it's about mitigating the risk. It's about reducing
Yep.
the chances that it's going to happen again.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times it doesn't mean making this individual's life miserable or punishing them. You have to take a different approach.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And we have the research to show, like, especially across other countries that have been, if we just zoom out on like the idea of corrections, we have lots and lots of evidence to show that if you shift the paradigm on how we treat humans and you provide opportunities to heal,
Yeah.
there you will have better outcomes. And it doesn't mean that I'm just going to sit here and indict correctional facilities or indict all police officers or anything like that, because I fundamentally believe I'm an incredibly optimistic human being, probably more than I should be.
Sure.
But my having worked with officers, having worked in with law enforcement officials, having been raised within a law enforcement family myself, I know that most people are just trying to do a good job, and they're trying to do it with the tools that they have at their disposal. I'm just arguing, let's change the tools.
Let's change the tools. Let's change the approach. So you were working in the jail for a period of time, working with sex offenders and et cetera, right? All these people who are in that setting, and now you don't necessarily predominantly work with that population anymore. You more or less work with the former, right? Do you think you could work with both populations at the same time? Which, seeing sort of, for me, when I see the effects of this trauma on my clients and all of the things it does to them, it makes me, it's probably the hardest part of my job. It's probably the one part of it that becomes very emotionally draining for me. I don't know if I could work with both. I don't know if I could then turn around and then go treat the sex offender. Do you know what I mean? What do you think?
I do think it depends on the person. For me, I think I could, but for a limited time. And I actually really think this. I really fundamentally believe this. I believe is when you serve people that you can, for only a limited time, hold so much trauma.
Sure.
So for me, as a clinician, I was ready to be done working in the field of working with people who had committed sex offenses.
Yeah.
Because I had reached holding that cup, I had reached my limit.
You were full.
I was full. I was full of the pain. I was full of the things that they have done. It was time for me to be, I'm in private practice. I run my own business. I see every version of every problem there is now. That's enough. That's enough for me. And, but will I ever say that I won't ever do that again? No, but would it be a limited time? Yeah. It would be a limited time.
That makes a lot of sense. You have to be able to empathize with your client. It doesn't mean you have to think what they did was reasonable, but you have to be able to empathize with them, and to do that for a prolonged period of time. With people who've done things that are, especially when you've seen that those things hurt your other clients. I totally agree with that, and it's something that I experienced as well. Absolutely. So now you're working with your own private practice. All online, right?
Yes, entirely online video.
That's so cool.
Counseling. So I have therapists that work for me, and I have my own podcast.
Is that therapist thing new, where you have therapists
in the last year? Yes, it is new. Of course, when you work in sexuality, that is a giant need. So I am full a lot of the time. So I needed to be able to funnel the folks who seek me out to other therapists, and know that I can also help impact their care too.
Right.
Because I can help those therapists navigate some of the cases they manage, and or provide education when necessary. And it allows for clients to be served in a way, and I can have kind of my touch on a lot of different types of problems. And I find it to be really, really rewarding.
Awesome.
And here pretty quick, I'm going to be in March, I'm going to be launching a membership site for therapists specifically, and psychologists and ERNPs to receive the sex education training, but also like, how do you tackle what's happening for you inside of you while you're facing the cases you're facing.
Yeah. So and that you talked about that earlier. It seems like your goal maybe is to expand more. You've worked in the field, you work with clients every day, and now you're pushing more and more to be able to sort of mentor other health professionals, because that's kind of how you can make the big impact, right? You can help one person at a time for the rest of your life, but if you can train, hundreds of professionals, and they're going to then go and treat hundreds of clients, and you're going to make that bigger of a ripple.
There's enough work out here.
Yeah. No competition.
There is enough work out here to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would be silly to think I could tackle it all. There's enough work out here.
I had the same perspective with mental health. It's just like, if somebody opened up a psychiatric clinic across the street from me, I would be happy about it. I would say, thank you. I'd go over and say, tell me what I can do to help. Thank you so much.
Yes. How can I send you people?
Yeah. I'll send you people.
I have a wait list. Come on.
Yeah. Start picking people off. So that's really cool. You're going to be marching. You're going to say you're going to be doing that in April, you said?
March, yeah, we're going to be doing a big. I'm gonna swear again, so preparing the listeners. We're going to be doing a big. We're gonna do a big a summit called "Shit You Didn't Get to Learn in Grad School." And then we're going to launch the membership site after that, so that folks can really get a handle on these cases that they face, and what it brings up for them, and how to. Like, how do you tackle how hearing the stories you hear impacts your own sex life?
Oh yeah.
Like, we're not robots.
No. Well, being personal, like I don't personally have, the sexual trauma that my clients will have, but most of the things that I hear from clients say, I can usually, doesn't seem to stick to me, except when I hear about childhood sexual trauma, and then I'll have nightmares. Like I'll have these vicarious nightmares, and I'll cry right on my way to work. And my wife's really supportive, so I'm able to I hope I'm able to process it. Hopefully I'm not just shoving it down, but like even if it's not like triggering my own trauma, it's all vicarious. And so there's no way you can't like if you're empathizing with your clients, it's happening, you know what I mean? To some extent, because we're not robots.
No, we're not. And for those listening out there, this isn't for us mental health professionals to make you feel guilty. Not that at all. It's just that when we carry a lot of pain, like one of my colleagues whom I love talks a lot about, like, we are the story collectors. That is what our duty is. Yeah. And if you think about the number of stories we collect, of course that's going to make an impact. Of course. There's no doubt.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. That absolutely makes a lot of sense. You posted a new website. Is it new?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Luckily, I have I really love my husband. He manages. He's my business director, but he also manages all the tech, because his background is in computer engineering, and he he redid my entire website. Which, for those of you who are interested in the podcast and all the things that are going on with it, it's Sex Talk with Erika, ERIKA, and
ErikaMiley.com, right? ErikaMiley.com.
Yeah, ErikaMiley.com. You can find me there. But the new website has everything we're doing with the podcast, and he took which I felt awkward in them, awkward photos of me, so that so that we come up in the SEO more. I don't understand all the things, but anyway, that's how you find all of the things that you're looking for. And the podcast is anywhere folks want to download podcasts, iTunes, Podbean, Spotify. It's in all those places.
I teach nursing, and a couple times I've made them listen to some of your podcasts on, especially if we talk about psychosocial issues or gender issues. And yesterday I was trying to find something, see if you had anything on it, and I was just looking at some of the titles of your podcast, and they're absolutely fantastic. I think your website, I'm trying to see if it can get back down. Oh, I can't get all the way to the bottom, but some of your earlier titles, man, they're wonderful. Like, it's just like, I don't know. They're fabulous. You're talking about stuff, just absolutely normalizing it. This is what these words are called. This is what these issues are. And it's going to be in the title. And we're going to talk about this in detail because we got to.
Yeah, it's absolutely important. Where are people more likely going to talk about their sexual lives or problems they're facing? They're more likely to come to their doctor.
Yeah.
They're more likely, because if they don't have a therapist, where are they going to talk to them about the erectile dysfunction? Where are
Right.
they going to talk to them about, oh, I used to be able to, I used to be able to lubricate, whether it's a penis body or a vulva body. Like, I used to be able to lubricate, but I'm not doing that anymore, and I don't know what to do. There's oftentimes maybe a physiological issue, but there also can be a psychological issue happening, and we have to assess for all of that. We have to look at a whole role map, not just parts of it, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Isn't there an episode called Clitorate? Is that an episode title?
Yeah, that's it's actually a book that Dr.
Okay.
Lori Mintz wrote.
Okay.
She wrote a book called Becoming Clitorate.
Yeah.
And essentially, Dr. Lori Mintz talks a lot about many of the topics you and I are actually talking about right now. She talks about the cultural issues that limit people's ability to understand their physiology, their psychology around sex, that these barriers that are actually impacting people's ability to connect with their partners in the way that they want to.
There it is, Becoming Clitorate. Yeah. Okay, that sounds cool. I have to check that one out. I'm going to download that one now.
Yes.
This one's interesting. Sex and the Christian faith. That sounds really cool. I grew up going to church. I go to church every Sunday.
Yes.
And so that sounds interesting. That sounds cool. Who's the guest on that one?
So first things first, like that episode is not an indoctrination of all religion, or not an indoctrination in like indicting all religion. That's all. That's what I want to say. I actually I had a wonderful colleague who is an ASECT certified sex therapist and very much trained like myself, and identifies herself as a Christian therapist. And she just her name's DeAndrea Blylock Johnson, just a fantastic human being. And we talk a lot about how when religious views get it wrong and when religious views get it right. And when I see a church or when I see someone's belief, and we'll talk specifically about Christianity, Christian churches, when they do it right, they're framing it from a pleasure perspective. They're framing it from your body is meant for this. They're framing it from pleasure's not a sin. They're framing it from your body's not wrong and your desires are not wrong. That's when we find people having issues across their lifespan, is when a religious organization frames a person as wrong and bad and broken.
Definitely. Yeah. And I know a lot of people who have been really hurt because of that. Tremendously hurt because of it. And and like I said, as a Christian person, I can go through all of these, all of this justification to hurt people. And like, I could argue about it for days, and that's not always effective, but it's just like, that's not what, if you believe in Christianity, you don't have to believe that sex is bad, and you don't have to believe, the things that are hurting people.
And you can still be a Christian person and bring sex into your life wholly and fully without shame.
Definitely.
It may take some therapy, so come see us, therapists.
Come talk to us, yeah.
But when you come see a therapist, my job is not to make you forsake your religion. That's not my job. My job is to help you integrate your narrative into your life. And how does that best fit for you as a person?
Right. Yeah.
My job is not to be judgmental in the place. Like my job is to sit with that story. I'm a person of faith. I still identify myself as a Christian, and I will absolutely I will look at my faith in the most objective way I possibly can, and realize that many, many, many Christian churches have harmed people. Harmed the LGBTQ community.
Oh, brutally.
And it is up to us as Christians to admit that harm and say, nope, that's not okay.
Definitely.
And to then integrate a different story. What are we going to do now? What are we going to do as Christians? How are we going to make this church what it was actually meant for? so that people don't walk around. I can't tell you how many times couples have come to me, you know, being raised in a Christian church and not having any information about their bodies, and then being told from the time they're pubescent that their bodies are wrong or masturbation is wrong. Here, let's add more words that the FCC are going to get mad about. that all of those things are wrong, and that any kind of pleasure is bad. Don't do that. You're wrong. You're going to die. Like, you're going to burn in hell. And then those couples come to me. They tell me, we waited until we got married. We waited to have sex until we got married. And it wasn't this wonderful, beautiful thing that we were sold.
Brutal.
We don't know how to have sex. We don't know how to enjoy ourselves, because I still have this narrative in the back of my head that I'm not supposed to be doing this.
Right. This is wrong. This is bad.
Because guess what? Our brains are just not as evolved as we think they are. Yeah. They just really aren't.
We're very vulnerable. Yeah, and so the idea that it's, because I grew up in the church, man, it is absolutely the cultural norm, some of these things, right? Mm-hmm. Where you're disparaging against the LGBT community, disparaging against sexuality in general. And this is the cool part here. I'll get a little bit of religious here. That's what JC did. That's what Jesus did. He went into places and he took the cultural norm and he gave it the middle finger and he said, no, we're doing something different now, yo. And it did.
Jesus was the original rock star, in my opinion. Man. Like, one of my favorite, like, and our listeners may, you know, turn off if we're going to get religious.
Turn the show off. Do it.
Turn it off. But here's the thing. Like, one of my favorite images of Jesus is him getting mad. And it's like the only time that you see Jesus actually get angry, and he flips the money changers' tables over. And he says, not in my Father's house will you do this. So essentially saying to corruption, no, not today. Get out. This is not okay. You are harming my people.
You do not get to exploit my people.
Yes, and
you don't get to tell them that they're doing it wrong.
I keep wondering, like, when I know some Christians are waking up. Some Christians are or have awoken and said, you know what? No, that hate shit ain't working. It's not working, and it's not okay. And that's not what Jesus was about to begin with at all.
The one story I really like is when the woman washes his feet with oils and her hair. Can you imagine how promiscuous that would have been, especially at the time? Right? The fact that back then women didn't talk to men. Women didn't talk to men in their own families, right? Yeah. And so the fact that the disciples have a fit, and he just told them to chill out, right? He said, this is fine. This is beautiful.
Yeah. Not today. Not today, Satan. Get away.
Get away.
No. Being able to understand that love is possible within inside yourself. Definitely. And that can fundamentally change your sexual connection and your sexual health with your partner is essentially my aim with my clients. And to not dictate that for them, but to help them discover that within themselves.
I think here's the deal. You know, if we were all the same, life would suck so hard. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so to have people with different values and different beliefs is essential, not only so things can be interesting, but so things can happen. If people didn't think differently, we wouldn't have different things. And so to have different people with different perspective, with different values, maybe they're uncomfortable with certain sexual things, maybe they're more comfortable working in that framework, and giving them the freedom that that fits with their values is fabulous, because you still want to preserve that. You don't want to say, look, you know everything you think about is wrong, you should abandon everything, you should do everything different. No, you engage their values, engage the way they think about things, and then you sort of you give them some ideas on how they can be more free, and you facilitate some healing, and it'll do wonders for them. But we still want to preserve their values and who they are as a person.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And one of my favorites, so I am a big, for those of you who are not in the therapy field, this is going to sound like jargon to you anyway, but I'm a big ACT therapist girl, so acceptance and commitment therapy.
Russ Harris.
And Russ Harris, Kelly Wilson.
Come on.
Oh, those people, I just love them. And one of the things in Stephen Hayes' workbook, he talks a lot about the values of a person being perfect for the person who has them. Mm-hmm. And that is fundamentally true, that most of the time my clients have some values that are dictating their life. They have, one, maybe not acknowledged them in a while, not in this like objective, like values are this perfection thing, like evaluated good. It's much more like, no, the values are whole for the person who has them. And that oftentimes it's our behavior that doesn't necessarily match whatever our North Star is, those values. And so when you can start pulling back and looking at those values again and go, oh, okay, this is what I fundamentally believed or have believed or is important to me from the get-go. I've just kind of shifted my focus, and now I got to shift my focus back to what was actually important to me to begin with.
That's so good. So you're not moving, you're not saying, here's the status quo, here's where you should be, and I'm going to help you be there. You're saying, here's who you've always wanted to be. This is how you've always, what you found important to yourself. And though you may not realize it, you've actually shifted away from that. And if we can remind ourselves of that, then maybe we can, our thoughts and feelings and behaviors and emotions can start shifting that way as well.
Yes, absolutely. The other thing I noticed, and I don't know if you noticed this with your clients, because I'm not going to speak for you, but I have a heavy bet that you probably have seen this too, that most people do not know what to do with any intense feeling. They have no clue how to manage any intense feeling, regardless of where it is on the spectrum of feelings. So I often am working with my clients to help them acknowledge that, one, feelings are for everyone and all of them are for all of us. And that, two, that you may fall back into a pattern of dealing with even how you deal with a negative feeling, like how you might try to push down sadness. When you experience extreme joy, you might still use that same kind of treatment plan for extreme joy because you didn't know how to manage feelings to begin with.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. I think I have experienced that. Yeah, they can't really tell me what it is, and they're not always like, is it like, do you uncomfortable? Like, do you not like it? And they're not always giving me a straight answer because they can't really put a finger on it. It's just, they feel
and it is this, okay. So if you're managing this feeling, like say you go through a breakup, which is, when I'm working with my single folks, that's usually something that we're gonna navigate, right? So if you're going through a breakup and you want these intense feelings of sadness and grief and a lot of times that like those feelings of rejection, they want those feelings to go away, and they start to, once they start to feel better and we start learning how to manage those negative emotions, then they feel a positive emotion and they're like, okay, I don't know, I'm back to these patterns again and I don't understand it. I'm feeling better. Why am I back here? And I have to go, like, like these emotions are emotions. That brain you've got, it's a machine made to think. It's not your ally. It's not your enemy. It takes some time to learn how to practice what you're doing with negative emotions with positive ones too.
Definitely. And that's that seems like that's a good ACT, that a good ACT component, where you're like, you're gonna feel the way you're gonna feel.
Yep.
Right. These emotions are gonna happen no matter what. And even as a med prescriber, my goal is never to take away the emotion, right? And so it's about how can you continue to experience and feel the way you feel, but then be able to still live your life and have meaningful relationships and be able to go to work and be kind of whoever you wanted to be or want to be.
Yes.
While still having strong emotions.
Oh, beautiful.
Let's do it. Yeah, emotions are important, man. We can't get rid of those.
Oh, it would be so boring out here.
We don't want to. It'd be so boring. It would be so boring.
I was going to say, I'm not going to lie. I still have that 2-year-old that lives in my head that wants, cookies and a nap. But I have to go,
come on.
Hey, 2-year-old, we'll have cookies and a nap later. It's okay. Yeah.
We could just schedule. You got to put it on the calendar, man. You can't. It's not worth throwing. It's not worth throwing the chair about right now. We'll just put it on the calendar. We'll get it later. I say, are you selling stuff on your website?
Yeah,
I thought I saw some. I'm trying to find it out,
That's
like
weird,
your sweatshirts and
but
stuff.
Also cool. I gotta look.
Where is it?
Like, where is my merch? So there's cups. I think there's a sweatshirt. there's my husband designed it all, and I'm just very proud of him. I can't help myself. It's called. It's the
There's one I want to get. How do you get to it?
sextalkwitherica.com, and
Where
there is a link that says merch table, because I'm a music nerd and I love the idea of having a merch table, just like I did when I was in a funk band. So right now there's the mugs and tumblers, and then there's also t-shirt, and there's a hoodie for my Northwest people. Shout out to the Northwest. I live in Florida now, but the Northwest will always have a part of my heart.
Oh, clothing. Here goes. Okay. Yeah, so I misadvertised you. Your website is
ErikaMiley.com will still get you to me and some of the podcast stuff, but the new podcast, all of the podcasty things are at sextalkwitherica.com.
I see. Mm-hmm. And the shirt says, "I'm a product of sex," which is true, right? And then be curious. Hey, I think this hoodie looks cool.
That's our primary tool. I when I'm training therapists, or when I'm working with my clients, I'm like, I'm going to date myself here. If you can turn yourself into Columbo about yourself, you can accomplish a lot less judgment. Yeah.
That's real. I want to get one of these sweatshirts. I'm gonna try to. I'll figure this out. And we can wear be curious. I was teaching empathy to nursing students the other day, and I feel that curiosity is essential for it. You have to be, like you said, Columbo. You have to be an investigator to understand empathy. As a therapist, essential. As I think as a human, it's essential to understand what people are doing. So that's fabulous. That's awesome.
Well, and if you can, I want to tell all of you, try it out the next time you're in conflict, the best you can, because when you're in a conflict, sometimes that fight or flight or freeze takes over, and you can't make good choices. So take a break and then come back. Okay. But the next time you're in a conflict with your partner, try putting on the Columbo hat and ask open-ended questions. See how that goes. Check it out. See, call me and tell me I'm full of crap, but give it a go. You might get more data, and you might understand your person a little better and connect in a different way, which more than likely might end up that you get better and more sex.
That becomes the goal, right? At the end. Mm-hmm. You work with a lot of couples. So what feedback have you gotten? That's such a great intervention. What have they said to you after they've tried it?
Oftentimes they're like, it makes common sense. Of course it makes complete sense, and we just haven't done it. That's a lot of the feedback I get. Sure. Right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
That we get into our lives, we get into our schedules, and we get complacent, and we get stuck in our own heads about it, honestly. And so there's no one here that I'm gonna go and wag my finger at and blame. It's life gets busy and hard, and we have suffering in store for us, right? Yeah. So it does take some. One of my favorite colleagues talks a lot about having Shane Burkle. So for those of you who are therapists out there, he does the podcast, the Couples Therapist Couch, and he talks a lot about having an mature adult relationship. And I think that this is one of the benchmarks of it, is being intentional, slowing down your conversations, and being curious about your partner's experience. That will, in a lot of ways, allow you to see each other in a new and different light.
Say it again. Be intentional.
Yes.
Say, what was the next thing? Slow down your experiences.
Yes, slow down your conversation, slow down all the parts of it, plan sex, make it up, put it on the calendar, and then and allow yourself to be curious about your partner. That can change the tide of any relationship, and not only romantic relationships. That can change friendships. Yeah, for reals. It doesn't have to be just romantic. It can be anything. It can be colleagues, right? That's a good experience. Question I get sometimes when I'm talking about motivational interviewing is they ask me, is it going to work with your family? Can you do it with your spouse? And in my personal experience, I'll start the question like, hey, honey, I'm wondering if you and I could spend a couple of minutes talking about how there isn't any gasoline in the car, right? It's very hard for me to stay objective
in that relationship where I could do it all day with clients, but for some reason with my kids and my wife, that objectivity, and that might be solved by the being intentional, slowing myself down, and being curious. Maybe I'm thinking that the motivational interviewing will take me there first, but I probably have to get myself there first. As far as
honestly, like not expecting yourself when you're tired and you're hungry and you're done at the end of the day, not expecting yourself to be able to have that conversation well at the end of the day. Sure. And by slowing yourself down, I really mean actually scheduling it after you've had a nap, after you've had something to eat, after you maybe
don't talk about it now.
Maybe the kids need to not be in the room and yelling and screaming, right?
Yeah.
Like then that's when you'd probably have the best the best possibility for being able to hear each other.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, that's excellent advice. That's fabulous advice. I want to ask you kind of one more thing, and we do have some time to talk about this in some detail if you want to. This show I'm hoping is available. Sometimes I talk about pretty specific psychological things, but I'm hoping even if it is pretty specific, I want it to be available to anyone. And so kind of just thinking about an audience member of anybody, what are some misunderstandings about sex that you would like to correct for people?
Probably the first thing is the thing I hear all the time. I want to be able to have spontaneous sex.
Okay.
I just want to get rid of this myth altogether. Okay. Spontaneous sex is mostly not a thing. Oh, and by that I mean many of us who hope to have a sexual experience prepare in some way.
Okay.
Whether it be psychologically, physically. I'm just going to give a kind of a gendered example.
Okay.
And I'll give it's my personal example. When I get ready for date night, I'm going to, in the beginning of the day, start preparing for that sexual experience by taking a shower, making sure my legs are shaved, and knowing that would be helpful to me and my partner well before that date night.
Gotcha.
Does sex more likely to happen during that date night? Yes.
Okay.
And it is not a spontaneous thing that happens out of the blue.
Yeah. There's not like you're not like doing something like cooking and then someone crosses their arm with the other person and you make eye contact and then it's just like, I wasn't thinking about this at all. Yeah, this is for both of us. It wasn't like, no, it's like the dude walked in and he was like, no, he had been thinking about it for about 45 minutes and that's what happened. Yeah,
exactly. Or she'd been thinking about it for 45 minutes and started to look in his direction maybe a little bit more often, or started to send maybe some sexy texts all day long, or whatever the case may be. Most of the time, sex is not spontaneous.
So what is it that you want? So I agree with that. That makes a lot of sense. So the spontaneous sex we think of, if you really examine it, are not really spontaneous. And so what is it that you're wanting to get that out of people's heads? So what lesson do you want them to learn with that? What do you want them to do instead?
I would love for them to first have conversations about sex at all.
Okay, just talk about it. Just talk about it.
And if you don't know how, I definitely have episodes on the show about it, but also like it's okay to look for resources to help you have these conversations, to help navigate these conversations by even saying like, hey, I don't know how to have this conversation. Can we figure out a time that we can? And maybe even both look up some resources on YouTube or on Google that we can like start to have conversations about sex, about what we like and what we don't like, so that we can better communicate with each other what sex can be like for the other person. Because I don't know why in this culture we have expected men in particular to be experts on sex. One.
Okay.
And two, that women should just know what a partner wants, or vice versa, that you should just know. You didn't get good sex education to begin with. How could you just know?
Yeah.
It's not possible.
How do you have that intuitively? Like, how do you just naturally understand it?
You don't have that. You didn't have the roadmap to begin with. And if you don't understand, like, say most sex education programs do not talk about pleasure. Okay. So why on earth, like, would we expect, say a man wants to have oral sex with his partner, how would we expect him to know where the clitoris is, or how it looks, or how it's
Sure.
actually bigger than what the entirety of most sex ed books have shown
Right.
students for the last 40 years? And so being able to have those conversations with your partners is incredibly important, because then that way you have a roadmap of what they like.
Yeah.
And what they like doesn't necessarily mean anything about you as their partner.
So let's say you're a listener now and you identify with this. You say we've never talked about sex, and you think about, and I can think of I can think of a dozen reasons of how there's consequences to that. So what recommendation would you give to this listener on how to broach it? And I know you have podcasts on it, and I would say go listen to the podcast. But what was one tip you would say on how to broach that topic with maybe a significant other who you're not sure how will respond?
I would first start with the context of being okay and honest with the lack of information that you have.
Okay.
So that you're already owning, like, hey, I just don't know. I didn't have anybody in my family, or I didn't have any teachers, or I don't know a lot about this, and I would like to know more. More specifically, I want to know how to help you have a good sexual experience. So I actually encourage people. I encourage people to develop their own sexual ethics. I'm actually going to pull out my little notes.
Pull it out.
Sexual ethics.
Sexual
and
ethics.
How to develop them, because here's the reality. Like if you are told your entire life sex is bad, wrong, how are you going to create any kind of positivity around it unless you are really thinking about it, that gives you the way forward, right? Like how do you create a roadmap with someone if you don't know your own?
Yeah.
So I encourage people to develop their own sexual or sexual spiritual ethics. And I'm going to give you an example. So these are mine. So the first one is consent. And consent is not only just yes or no. Consent can be sexy. It can be asking your partner if they like you doing something, a sexual act specifically, and checking in with them while you are engaging in that sexual act.
Okay.
It also could be like asking for consent to even touch them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, can I have a hug?
Okay.
Do you see what I mean? Like that.
Yeah,
this is a very nuanced thing. This isn't just yes, I want sex. No, I want sex.
Gotcha. It doesn't have to be a weird thing, like, cause did you get consent? And so you're supposed to just say, okay, do you have sex with me now? Right? You can make it into something that adds to the experience.
Exactly. Absolutely. My second sexual ethic is non-exploitative. See, words at the end of the day, words don't work. Non-exploitative. So essentially, one of my sexual ethics is that I will not exploit my partner for my own sexual pleasure. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people think they think of exploitation, they immediately think of like sex trafficking, when in reality humans actually engage in exploitation a lot. And so understanding that I'm not going to use my partner for my own sexual fulfillment without them having any pleasure or say in the matter.
Gotcha.
The third for me is that me and my sexual partner or partners are that we have shared values. That I am going to want to be intimate or sexual with someone who has similar values to myself. I'm not talking about religious values. I'm talking about the values we talked about earlier in the show.
Yeah.
That those deep held, meaningful things for me, I need to pretty much match pretty well with a person. Like, luckily, my husband and I match pretty much identically in our values.
It's such an intimate thing. The sex is so personal, so intimate, and that relationship is so important there. Whatever you choose, however you choose it to make it happen. But if those values can align, then it's going to be so much more meaningful, whatever that relationship is.
Absolutely. And it also makes it really clear, like when I'm working with people who are dating, or that it also makes it very clear when a relationship can end.
Okay.
If you and a person do not match on values, say let's just give a very common one that I see a lot. Someone wants to have and build a family.
There it is. Yeah.
And then they are having maybe building and starting a relationship with somebody that does not want a family. They want to just be with one person, and they're not interested in having children. Mm-hmm. So that doesn't necessarily, those two values don't necessarily align. Yeah, sure, you can have sex and enjoy it, absolutely have a good time, but also be honest with yourself that this relationship will more than likely come to an end.
That's good.
So my fourth sexual ethic is that the sex is protected. If for me, if and I think that this could be an ethic for everyone. Unless you are in a committed relationship where both of you have been tested and have made sure that you have respected your own body and the partner that you want to have sex with, that you have been tested and you're using condoms or some form of protection that is needed for the type of sexual acts you want to have with a person.
Yeah, it's most people I talk about protection are under prepared and do not know, right? They don't understand to that extent. So
they think condoms, and that's essentially where it stops. But that's oftentimes what we receive in education. They show you a condom, but they don't show you a dental dam. They don't show you any kind of what actually birth control looks like. They don't show you. They aren't.
Lots of options.
They are giving you all of the options. They don't show you what spermicide looks like. They don't show you what that a person could take PrEP and protect themselves from potentially an HIV infection.
Wow.
Like, they don't talk to you about those things. And then my last one is that our sexual experiences together will be pleasurable and there will be shared pleasure. So I will, again, not be exploiting my partner for pleasure. There will be shared pleasure.
That's fantastic. Those are fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing those. And that's a perfect kind of, I think, way to like the kind of the final like climax to this excellent information. I
love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Sex pun, pun intended. Erika Miley, it was so great to have you on this show. It was a huge honor, and I love collaborating with you, and I love listening to your show. So everyone should check it out. Thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you for having me, and everybody out there. Jump on Sex Talk with Erika. I'm happy to also answer any questions. I do a segment called Ask Erika. So if you've got questions, put them in the inbox. I will more than likely tackle it at some point. Perfect. Awesome. All right. Thank you so much. And this is Health Cafe Radio, KSBN 1230. I'll catch you guys Saturday, 6:05 p.m.